Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for the Acolyte episodes 6 and 7. So next week we have, I assume, the season finale, possibly. I'll be honest, I'll say hopefully the series finale of the Acolyte. I'm behind a week, so we got episode 6 and episode 7. I even took some notes. Obviously not a lot. I have a buttload of notes for episode 7, but as you can see, I didn't even get through, and this is, skipping lines. I didn't even get through a whole, notepad of notes for episode 6 because it was that type of episode. Also, you might be noticing my nonsensical shirt. That's the point. It doesn't make sense, and I thought it was very appropriate for all the things that don't make sense in both episodes 6 and 7. Despite getting answers in episode 7, there are still things where I'm just like, that is dumb. So we'll get to all of that. I'll do my best to kind of speed through episode 6 because it's that type of episode. I mean, honestly, if I have to choose between because this episode is the better version of episode 4. That's all it is. It's episode 4, they did nothing. Episode 6, they did nothing. The only reason episode 6 is 10 times better than episode 4 is because at the very least, things were teased. That was better than episode 4. Some stuff actually did happen. We got some minor things here and there where it was okay, they're on this planet yet to be named, possibly leading into some stuff that I've heard, but I won't talk about that. Here's some little answers with the cortosis where it's oh, you can see just a straight line of cortosis. That makes sense why his base is in this mountain. It has cortosis. That's why he's able to get it. It's a rare material. He found a rare place that has cortosis. Here's just, some little things here and there. So that's what happened for episode 6. Things were teased, talked about the helmet, teased, getting answers, which had I seen the episode when it came out, I would have been super pissed off. Oh, they teased the answers again, and then I still have to wait another week after a short crap episode. But I'm gonna shoot down the line. Actually, we're gonna get to something first because I wrote this after because I watched something else and it made me remember I didn't write this down. I listened to it, I heard it, I thought it was interesting, and then I realized when I heard it again, it's basically what I'd been talking about probably the last couple of weeks, where I'm they're gonna find a way, they're gonna throw some lines in there, they already kind of did, where it's gonna be he wasn't a Sith, he was a Dark Jedi. And now it's 100% going to just be, he was a Dark Jedi. He used to be a Jedi. He was trained by a Jedi. They even have Vanestra say that where she's I can see that from a videotape, he was Jedi trained. So I was okay, that's very interesting. And then he used to be a Jedi. It was a long time ago, to which it doesn't make sense. Why did Osha say, I've never heard of you? That is one of the stupidest things I could have possibly heard. These are human beings that wrote this. And the first thing I thought when she said that was, I don't know half the people that went to my middle school. When I was in middle school, I didn't know half the people in that building. I didn't have classes with every single person. It was a 4-story building. I didn't know everybody in there. I didn't even see some of the people that went to that school. And I was in that building just as much as they were. I literally did not see them. And she's talking about a building that's basically the size of a city. Thousands of Jedi. All the time. Security guards, engineers. We even see some of the engineers when Vanestra's about to get on the ship. There are mechanics. There are people at the front desk. There are Jedi, Padawans, mentors, the Jedi Council. Thousands of people. And she's I've never heard of you. That line made no sense to me. And I was just wow, they wrote that. They had a human being say, I've never heard of you, to a man that went to a place where there are thousands of people. I've never heard of you. Why would you? Why would you? So that was just that I think that was the dumbest line in the entire episode. Probably the whole series. If I'm being totally honest, I know people mock, the power of many, which Kamir says power of 2. I guess we'll have to wait till the finale because based on what happened in episode 7, he was not there. So they just wrote that in there. It's he says power of 2. And I'm that is an oddly specific way for him to say that based on them having a full-on chant about the power of 2. So I thought that was weird. Okay, power of 2, but as far as we know, still zero connection because of the fact that he wasn't there during the flashback. So I just thought that was a weird thing, but he does say that he used to be a Jedi, Dark Jedi, and it might not matter if they do actually kill everybody off. None of this will matter anyway, as far as the Sith and all the terms, they could actually kill everyone off. So we've yet to see if that'll happen. We just have to wait till the end of episode 8. But, they only got like 2-3 people left that they got to kill anyway. So we'll see what happens with that. But Khmer was a dark Jedi. Osha said one of the stupidest things I've ever heard in my life, saying like, I've never heard of you. Why would you? That doesn't make any sense. And then we have the rest of the episode. So I'll just start at the top, which was actually the I've never heard of you line. I thought that was crazy. I didn't write any of this down as far as the weird scene where it's like, he takes his clothes off and he gets in the water and stuff. I saw the thumbnails. I knew that was like the big thing everyone was talking about. And when I was watching it, I was like, okay, it's not that big of a deal. It's weird because it doesn't make it as a scene. It's just dumb because it was like, all right, so he got naked, he got in the water, he knew that she was following him, and then he's like, yo, how does the lightsaber feel? Like, you haven't like used the lightsaber in a long time. And he talks about her form and her elbow and all that. And then it was just like they have like a short conversation, and he's like, oh, well, if you aren't gonna join me, then I have to put my clothes back on. I'm like, and that line, it definitely caught me because I'm like, okay, that's a fascinating way to put that. But also it's weird, like, why'd you get in the water? You got naked and then you just got right back out of the water. It doesn't make any sense. They could have done any form of that where he just walks around a corner and he leaves the lightsaber on the counter. He goes to the bathroom, he does anything and just leaves the lightsaber where it's at. And then it's like, so what do you think? Like, that, it's happened in a myriad of things. You don't have to have someone get naked, get in the water, and then be like, what do you think? And then he gets right back out of the water. And so apparently this is supposed to be the moment where they start to kind of join together a little bit, which flew right over my head because I'm like, I thought that was so stupid. It literally just was like, I didn't even realize that when I was watching the episode until I watched some other people talk about it. And I was like, oh, that's what was happening? Because that's stupid. That's about as dumb as the twins like switching places and then the good twin goes bad, the bad twin goes good. Like, that's just as dumb as that. Because I'm like, why would they suddenly fall for each other? But apparently that's supposed to be the thing. That's what was happening there. And I was like, I knew he took his shirt off, but I'm like, so did Kylo Ren. And that's not the only allusion to The Last Jedi, because they have that. Obviously, the planet itself kind of looks like it a little bit. The way that they had Osha dressed was 100% like this looks like Rey. So it was like very interesting, like all the allusions that they were clearly making towards The Last Jedi. And maybe that was the point, was to kind of, help that weird in-between love story, which, hey, I'm gonna say it like this. It was dumb in the movies too. When they kissed at the end, I was like, okay, but we don't need to get into the dumb things that happen in those movies because it started with The Last Jedi. I can tell you, point is, just random stuff. And I was like, all right, weird sequence, whatever. Apparently they're supposed to be getting closer. That makes no sense to me. They got one episode to do it, and apparently, probably season 2, I guess. But thought that was stupid. It's like, all right, that's just weird. That's just super weird. So then we switch over. We have Osha with Khmer. We have May with Soul. Soul, who, much like the love crap going over my head, Soul just, I don't know. He was distraught, maybe. They should have put that line in there, I guess, where he's just like, man, I can barely focus or something, because he literally had a conversation with this woman where he was like, why couldn't I sense his dark intent? And it's like, man, once again, humans wrote this. And I'm like, so you have this dude saying this where he recognizes he could not understand, he could not recognize the dark intent of the person that was near him. While he does not recognize the person, and she already had the scene. This is after the scene where she was gonna like stab him in the back with the kunai that she had, which still makes me question so many other things about the episode. Because I'm like, the thing started with her being like, I'm gonna kill this dude, and then it kind of went to wanting answers. But then there's the scene like right before she gets knocked out where she was answering the communications device, and I'm like, what was she gonna say there? Like, does she want to be found or does she not want to be found? Also, the whole being found thing, we had Basil, who was on the ship, knew that it wasn't her. I wrote this down, stupid slapstick moment. I hated that. That really got on my nerves. I'm like, this feels awkward. It felt weird just for her character. If it was like, and that's the crazy thing. I know it's the same actress, but I was like, I'm in the moment of, this is Osha. Like, I can do that where you have a character. This is Osha over here with Khmer on this ship right now. I'm with May. And they gave her this weird half second, and it was short too. That's what made it even weirder. I was like, it was so short, it made it even stupider that they made a slapstick moment. And she's like just looking at Basil, and he's like, I don't know, trying to do like his martial arts for him. I don't know, he was busting out the Terraskasi. And then he steps on her foot, and she's like, what the F, dude? And then he does like a little crab thing, and then he runs. And I could be wrong. And I just watched him like maybe 30-40 minutes ago. I guess it would be an hour ago for that episode. I'm pretty sure he disappears after that, unless I'm mistaken, because he was already in the episode. He didn't go to Seoul, which I thought was weird. They had the scene where it was like he was hiding from Seoul, and I'm like, okay, that's stupid, right? That makes no sense. Once again, pointless. It just is. Like, why is he hiding from Seoul when it should be like, dude, that's someone else. That's not Osha, that's May. Seoul should have got that, but he didn't. Should have put a line in there, but they didn't. He should have talked to Seoul, but he didn't. And then he just scampers off. And I swear, like I said, I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure that was the end of Basil in that moment. They had him like hiding for no apparent reason. And then he has the confrontation, steps on her foot, runs off. She grabs the droid, resets him, gets a little bit of oil in the face. And then that was the whole scene. And it was like, wow, that literally served no value. 100% zero value. I don't know, maybe the red light thing was possibly a hint as far as, Soul figuring out that it was May and not Osha, but I don't know. It was hard to tell during that scene, because when he first said it, I was like, oh, he now realizes it, because he kind of dropped like, oh, how you love the droid and how you take care of it. And she's like, yeah, I love it. And it's like, oh, she didn't say the name or she wasn't excited about it or anything. But then it went right into like, oh, this stuff about the Jedi and not getting answers. And I was just like, so did he understand that wasn't her? Or did he, like, I genuinely couldn't tell when he was supposed to have figured out that it was May and not Osha. Like, I just don't know. I really could not tell. That may have been the scene, but it was still hard to tell. So that moment ended up happening. Slapstick moment. It was dumb. We got no answers. The answers were, teed up, and then they tease them at the end of the episode, of course. And then we have this random thing I put, the rocks in the hideout. This is the moment where they were like sitting down and Kamira was like working on the helmet and stuff. And Osha was sitting like eating some soup. And the rocks look super fake. Like, if you just look at the scene, they literally look too perfectly draped. And I'm like, especially because it was the inside of the cavern. So I'm like, they look like they had water running over them. They're like perfectly smooth. And I'm like, these wouldn't look like that inside of the mountain. Granted, you could say whatever, fake alien planet, there could have been water, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, it's inside. And they were like perfectly smooth. And they literally just look like plastic. They look like curtains were draped over them. And then the curtains were just like turned into plastic. I was like, they just look weird. They look like oddly uniform, I guess is the best way to put it, and super duper plastic. So I wrote that down because I was like, those rocks look super fake. It was hard not to notice. They look so plastic. I was like, they just look like the reflection was like that material that's reflecting right now just looks like 3 big hunks of plastic. So I wrote that down because it was hard not to notice that. But something I actually like. They have Force echoes in this episode. That's something that happens in Star Wars. Not a ton, but I always like it when it shows up. It happens a lot if you play like, the Star Wars Jedi games. It's like literally a specific power. But in live action, they don't do a ton. So I like that when they go through, Vanestra goes with their Padawan and they have the lightsaber. It's always dark stuff. It's never like a happy thing. It's always like, blasts and people screaming, and, lightsabers. But I'm like, I always like it when they have those moments. So I enjoyed that. That's really about it. The Padawan made like a weird accusation where I was like, maybe it was Master Soul that did this. And I was like, why'd they even put, once again, weird things that make no sense. Why even waste dialogue on him making a wrong accusation? Like, is he going to show up in episode 8? Like, and I genuinely asked this question. Is there a point to even having him answer that question and being like, oh, maybe it was Master Soul? And it's like, that's a serious accusation. Like, I know it was like 1 minute worth of dialogue, but it was 1 minute that was just like completely wasted, where I'm just like, why even bother with that? Why not just have him say something else that seems more intelligent, where he's just like, well, of course, I don't believe Master Soul did it, but who else could be as powerful? Like, why even accuse him? Like, it would just seem weird to even bother with that. But that moment happened. The lightsaber whip comes out, boom, crack of the whip, and then it's right back. So nothing happened there. I'm sure we'll get more of it in episode 8. That was really about it about that. Meg is locked up. That's where we're teased for the answers as far as episode 7 goes. Cortosis is a part of the mountain, so it was like, oh, okay, that's why it's a part of the hideout. Also, the hideout had like, it was the scene when Osha went outside, and it was like, oh, they had like little posts and stuff. It looked like he even had a mailbox, and I thought that was super funny because I'm like, it's not a mailbox, but I'm like, that looks like a mailbox. And he even had like the little guardrails and stuff, and I was like, I know it's just there, but it just looked super funny. It was like, it looks, it looked extra cozy, and it just made me laugh. So I thought that was funny. We found out that the helmet is like a sensory deprivation thing. I thought that was weird how they explained it. It felt like kind of contradictory, but I guess if you go with the sense of the force is within all living things, the fact that it blocks other people from connecting to you through the force kind of makes sense. So I was like, okay, it's like a sensory deprivation thing. That was another thing that to me at least, alluded to other Star Wars stuff, because Kamira says like, oh, there's nothing there except for what you take with you. And that definitely made me feel like The Empire Strikes Back, where Luke goes into the cave, which also gets alluded to. Well, I guess more so it was The Last Jedi that got alluded to in episode 7, when they actually show the hole and it looks just like the one from episode 7. But the same thing is done for Dagobah, where when Luke goes into that cave, it's kind of the same thing. Like when you go down, it's like what the heck is it? I wrote it down because they say a virgins. Yeah, a virgins in the Force. So when you go down, like that's like a repetitious thing that you see throughout the film. So in Empire Strikes Back, he goes down into a cave, so it's darker. In episode 7, they have like the pit or whatever you want to call it. It's like it looks exactly the same with like dark things and stuff coming out of it. It's like a dark side virgins in the Force, because you're going down, deeper down, the symbolism and whatnot. And the same for Last Jedi, you have to go down, but when you go up, it's like a nice convergence, which the only one that I can think of actually would be from The Mandalorian, where they had the temple where Grogu had to like sit on the thing from season 2. That would be like a virgins in the Force, but a light side. So it's like, it's a nice, clear, happy mountain, or however you want to explain it. But when it's deep down in the depths, it's a dark side virgins. When it's high on top of a mountain where you can see all the life around you, it's a light side virgins. So I thought that was cool. I was like, okay, dark side stuff. Obviously this is more episode 7, but I thought that was interesting. And then the connection with the helmet and the sensory deprivation. So we'll see what happens with that in episode 8. Once again, horrific ending. I will say, before we get to just how much I hate the ending of episode 6, the helmet looked really funny, because it looked like a huge helmet sitting on her head, and I just thought that was funny. And then we get to the scene of the actual helmet. She puts it on, and I love the view from the inside where it literally is just like 2 straight lines. I was like, wow, you really can't see anything. But she breathes, and it basically fades out, and then it's credits. And I could not believe that was how they ended that episode. I was like, you don't even show a glimpse of what she saw, because that's what I would have done. I mean, it's only 23 minutes. I mean, there's a myriad of moments that they could have added in to quite a few of these episodes, I'd say, especially for some of the endings. But this was the worst ending as far as I was concerned. Episode 6's ending was the worst ending we've had in this entire series, because that was horrible. Like, she just put the helmet on, she breathes, and then it's like, okay, you're in the darkness, and then bloop, we'll just fade to credits. And I'm like, okay. I was genuinely shocked. I would have been super pissed if I actually saw it the week it came out, because I was horrible ending, absolutely horrendous. So hated that, absolutely hated that ending. And then I went on to episode 7, the latest episode. Didn't go through that very fast. It's almost been 18 minutes, but there's a lot of dumb stuff in episode 6 for it to be such a short, pointless episode. So there's a lot of dumb things to discuss about that one. Then episode 7 happens. This was the episode I thought episode 3 was going to be, which oddly enough should have also just been the first episode. But this was good. Personally speaking, it was good. Not great, but it was good. And unfortunately, there were still some things that happened where I was just like, So, unfortunately, that fire still. But we'll get to that when we get to that, because there were a lot of things that happened in this episode. This, of course, is the answers. I literally put episode 7 answers, because I knew it was going to be that episode. It starts 16 years ago. I was like, all right, we're back on the planet. We start off, it was like, all right, they're doing something. They got like, Jedi metal detectors and all this crap. And then we get some dialogue. And right from that little bit of dialogue, I was like, okay, I'm kind of excited for this episode, because the first bit of exposition that we get is that they've been on this planet. Brondok, I believe, was the name of the planet. They're on the planet Brendok. I did write it down. Brendok. They were there for 7 weeks, and they thought this planet was uninhabited. That was apparently the story of this planet for who knows how long. I would love to know what a hyperdrive incident is, because I'm pretty sure that's what Indara said. It was like it was a hyperdrive incident. So I'm like, I don't know what the F that means, but something must have happened where they're like, whole planet's wiped out. That I thought that was crazy, but she was like, yeah, like a hyperspace incident. And I'm like, that's something. I would love to hear that story. I think that would be cool. But for whatever reason, a hyperspace or hyperdrive incident made people believe the entire planet was uninhabited for a super long time. They'd been there for 7 weeks, hadn't found anybody. They're like, all right, this planet, it seems like it's a virgins in the Force. That would explain why there's actually all this life here. Turns out that is definitely the case. That, that explains I wouldn't say it explains too much as far as episode 3. Like it seemed clear that it was something going on with that planet just from like the two planets aligning, and that was when they did the thing with the planet. But they specifically show in this episode like the actual dark pit, and it's like, oh, that literally just looks like the pit from The Last Jedi. So I was like, okay, that it gave like a little bit of extra context, but I was honestly like, it's Star Wars and witches and magic and stuff. I was like, if they went with the convergence was literally like the alignment of the planets in space creating extra magic and stuff, I'd be like, okay, that works. I mean, you know, if you talk to people that deal with astrology and stuff, it's like the planets aligning, all, you know, all that stuff people believe now. So it's like, if that was how they explained it in Star Wars, I was like, all right, the two planets line up, that's how they do it. But they show that it was like the planet itself is a vergence in the Force, and it even had like, you know, the dark pit. So I was like, all right, pretty cool. But they were there for 7 weeks, thought it was lifeless. That led to, you know, the line from episode 3 where it was like, oh, we thought this planet was uninhabited. I don't think any of us believe that. You know, obviously the witches didn't, but I know I didn't. I don't remember exactly what I said, you know, from episode 3, but I'm like, I don't know. You know, a lot of people, and this goes with just the show in general, even before episode 3, before episode 1 even came out, people had certain feelings on the show. So by the time we hit episode 3, I understood it was perspective. It was very clear. I thought it was very clear. But there are a lot of people that just hated the show so much that it was like, this just doesn't make sense. And I'm like, people believe this is just exactly what actually happened. And I'm like, obviously it has to be perspective. So when some of the things happen, you know, in the episode, a lot of people are like, oh, the Jedi are just the villains because they're just going to this planet to take the kids. My first assumption was like, they were already on that planet. I knew from that episode, I was like, they didn't know about the kids. I thought they knew about the witches though. That was my thing. I thought they knew about the witches, and then they discovered the kids, and it was like, okay, well now we definitely got to we got to take care of these witches. Because I thought for sure the Jedi were the ones that blew that place up. Because I was like, come on, that fire. But once again, we'll get to that. So Brendak is a virgin in the Force. I thought that was actually pretty cool. Oh, the CG on the speeder, my God, that was horrible. When Soul first took off, it looked a little better like later in the episode, but it was nighttime also. But when he did it during day, it was like, it was ugly. That's the only way I can describe it. It was ugly. It was like he almost kind of turned 2D because it was obviously a CG version of him, and it was like it was just bad. It just looked bad, and it's very unfortunate because I'm a huge fan of speeder bikes, and I'm just like, that's close enough to a speeder bike. I'm sure it's a different technical name and all that crap, but I'm like, that's close enough to a speeder bike, and it looked ugly, and that hurts my soul because I like speeder bikes. So I hated that CG. It did not look good, and I was like, ooh, that's horrible. But after that horrible CG, we have him exploring, and then we have the entrance to episode 3 where the girls meet up. He ends up following the girls, follows them back to the actual city, and this dude climbed an effing mountain. I even wrote that down, like, he really climbed a mountain and got inside. I was like, that's crazy. He climbed a mountain and he got inside. Also, he was the noise from episode 3 where they were like, oh, you know, something happened, and it's like, all right, girls, go to your room. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. He was the noise because he was like, all right, you know, they're teaching these girls how to use the Force and all this stuff. Let me get out of here, go back to my people. And then he was that noise. So I was like, all right, minute bit of context. We actually got an answer for that. I completely forgot about that. If I'm being totally honest, of all the answers that we got, I forgot that even happened. I was more concerned with like fire, you know, dead witches in a puddle and stuff like that. So I'm like, bigger things were on my mind. I forgot that even happened in that episode. But I was like, oh yeah, they had the weird noise scene. He was that noise. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. So after climbing a whole mountain, which I thought was absolutely wild, he goes back. And we have the situation where it's like, all right, this is what's going on. This is what I found. First off, the planet's inhabited. We are not alone, which I thought, okay, that's a huge difference. And so then it's like, all right, so this is what's going on. There's some weird things happening. These are witches. They got these 2 girls. Like we kind of got to go talk to these people like now. And Dara's like, hey, we should talk to the council. Soul's like, hey, nah. And so they don't. And I wrote here, they couldn't just find the city gate, which I thought was kind of funny, but I guess it makes sense because with the way I think it was shaped, it was like they would have had to have gone all the way around and then climbed up anyway because of how it was set up. So it's like, all right, they need to go through like the front gate, but they go through the elevator and they come out and the witches already know that they're there. And it makes a lot more sense now. I just assumed that the Jedi I thought they came to the front gate when that episode happened. I was like, oh, okay, they talked to them or whatever. I assume, because once again, we didn't know the whole perspective. I was like, okay, they knew that they're there So I just figured they kind of just showed up in the city. And it was like, no, they came up like the secret elevator and everything. So of course they knew that they were there. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then we have the scene play out where they know the girls are there and stuff like that. And I thought it was really cool where it was like, oh, so they were in Torben's head the whole time. Also, and I even put this down, I thought it was the Dathomirian mother that had done that. I didn't realize that it was Mother Anastasia. I thought it was the Dathomirian mom that was the one that did that. I thought they kind of even alluded to that where obviously she was the one that was, you know, being mean and stuff. Like she's like the tough mom. But I thought I could have sworn in episode 3 that they almost made it directly clear that she was the one that was doing that and not Mother Anastasia. So I was actually shocked when that scene popped up. And then it was her talking to Torben the whole time. And it was the whole time when they were like doing the stuff with the scene, when they cut back and the girls were already talking with Soul and everything. I was like, oh, they were like in his head the entire time. Like when he kneels down, that was just the end of that conversation. So that actually caught me off guard. And I was like, that I thought was actually kind of cool. And they kind of tap into like this little thing where it's just a dude who's like, I'm effing bored. I'm tired of being on this planet. I gotta go jerk off next to Moss. I'm just alone. Like, I don't want to go home. I'm tired of being here. Like, he was tired. And that was all they had to tap into. It's like, you want to go home? You should go home. You should be at home. And that was all they had to do to kind of tap into his head. So I thought that was actually kind of funny. It didn't really come into play later. Well, actually it did, because you know, it led into like the whole thing. But as far as the mind control element, it didn't really tap into things later for his character exactly. But him wanting to go home, definitely played a huge part, the part, in fact, of everything that happened, which kind of explains why he killed himself, because it was 100% him, more than anything, because Soul's whole thing was like, hey, you know, the council's doing this, the council's doing that. Once again, we got some interesting answers, because I'm gonna go through some of this stuff that definitely surprised me, but it was very fascinating. It was very fascinating. So I'll get to that later, but thought it was the Dathomirian mother that controlled him. That wasn't the case. And then when they go back to the ship after they have that moment like, hey, we're going to test the girls and all that stuff, they actually do some stuff. Once again, this goes into the element of a lot of things that people were saying, like, hey, the girls are too old. Like the whole thing with Anakin and all that stuff. They actually say it. They have that in the episode where Indara's like, we can't take them anywhere. Like the girls are too old. And then, you know, it's Soul's whole thing of being like, hey, we kind of have to save them. Like something, you know, and they go through the element of like, hey, don't confuse your feelings for other people's feelings and stuff like that. But it's funny because they were both kind of right, where it was like, you know, Soul's the more emotional character, but at the same time, everything that was said was kind of like, yeah, you kind of got to get them kids out of there. Like when they actually show May's side of things when she does her test and she just lies and everything, and then she explains Ascension, and it's like, oh, hey, you know, mom says that everyone has to be sacrificed, you know, for the greater good. I'm gonna just put it that way because I forgot the exact line. And it's like, that we got to get these kids out of here. So like they have moments where it's like, I completely understand where Indara's coming from, where she's like, hey, we got to check with the council. We have to do this. We have to do that. And then Soul's like, this girl literally is talking about possibly being sacrificed. Like obviously they don't know 100%. And even Indara was like, you know, markings are a part of a lot of different cultures. Like she's trying to be, you know, kind of devil's advocate to be like, hey, we can't just be like, we know for a fact. Like honestly, the big complaints everybody was having was like, oh, the Jedi are just doing this and they just do whatever they want. It was kind of touched on in this episode, which I never saw as an issue anyway. I know that was a huge thing with episode 3 where they were like, oh, the Jedi are just the bad guys. And I even saw that today with Soul basically stabbing Mother Anastasia, which I gotta be honest, you can't call me the bad guy and you do like a full demon smoke thing and I'm like, what do you want from me? He stabbed her and I was like, oh, okay. And then she instantly was like, I was gonna let Osha go. Should have shown that visually in a totally different way, man. I'm sorry, you got yourself killed. 100%, that was on her. Cause I'm like, you went demon smoke thing and I thought like she like are starting to like disperse in the like little smoke, demon smoke cells and all this crap. And I'm like, I couldn't even tell what was actually happening with May. I'm like, is she about to disappear? Because it looked like her clothes were coming apart. So I couldn't even tell what that maneuver was even supposed to be before she got stabbed. And I'm just like, I don't know what you thought was going to happen, but that was a bad move. Things were a little tense and you went into a demon mode. What do you expect? What do you expect? But during that scene where they talk about Ascension, this was a note that I had. Carrie Ann Moss's mole looked super fake. And it is. Didn't realize that before. But once they did an episode where there were a lot of close-ups of her talking to people, and it's like the camera's right here and the mole is right there, I was like, that literally just looks like a little piece of felt, and they just had like just stuck it right on her face. And that's exactly what they did. I don't know why they did that. I always think about that because there's like random things where they do that in shows sometimes. I'm like, well, it literally serves no purpose. They gave her a fake mole, and it looked super fake when they did like the close-ups. I'm like, that just looks like a piece of felt, and that's probably what it was. But wrote that down because I was like, that's when I noticed like that looks super fake. But then we have another answer, honestly, I thought kind of a great moment. The council said leave them alone, and I was genuinely shocked by that. And that once again kind of goes against that element of, you know, a lot of people's distaste for episode 3, where it's like, man, they're just making the Jedi into these villains and stuff, which I didn't even think that was the case personally, you know, for episode 3. But even this one was like, no, it's not the Jedi are bad. It's like, it really hones in on like these very specific couple of people that are making this very specific decision to do the things that they did, and just the crappy choices they made that led to everything that happened, you know, their intentions leading to all of them getting killed. Great line, if I'm being totally honest, because like, oh, it's a very, you know, we know what's going to happen type of Star Wars line. So I'll be honest, I really enjoyed that line. You know, your good intentions are going to get you all killed one day. So I can appreciate that. But the council told them no. I was genuinely shocked. I was like, all right, they're kind of putting things that didn't bother me, but a lot of the stuff that happened in episode 3 that, you know, once again, oh, they're just making the Jedi out to be the bad guys, which once again, I never thought was the case. I always assumed that they were on that planet where it was like, you know, the Jedi always do some kind of dark stuff. I assumed they knew about the witches and then found out about the kids. Turns out they literally didn't know life was on the planet at all outside of, you know, the little moss that they were picking up. So there were a lot of things that were surprisingly different, but the council straight up telling them like, yeah, just leave them alone, don't even bother them, was actually surprising. Like they 100% were like, yeah, we're not going into the realm of being, you know, like a police force. Like they really target that, because that was a huge thing for the episode 3 that a lot of people had an issue with, and it was like they kind of targeted a lot of the stuff that, once again, I didn't have any of these issues, but a lot of people did. So I'm curious how people are feeling about the, you know, getting the official answers now. It's not going to make the show better. You know, like minute bits and pieces, sure, but it's not going to be like, oh, it turns the whole show around. I know that's not going to happen, but I am curious how people are feeling getting some of these lines, like specifically like Indara straight up saying like, we can't take the girls, like she's literally too old, like Soul, it does not matter, the kid's too old. Like that was her first thing she said, was like, the kid's too old. Like what, like this shouldn't even be a conversation, dude. Like that was the first thing she threw out, and those are like the little things that people had issues with, and it's like, okay, they are touching on these things. The council said don't do that, probably mentioned the kids were, how old the kids were, and it's like, F them. You know, like that's, so they did some stuff that I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting, some of the little things that they talk about, and then them kind of just figuring out that the kids were virgins. And even with that, it was kind of, Indara was kind of like, yo, we still can't just be running and gunning, like we can't do it. Like they figured that stuff out, like, okay, the twins are like extra special because, you know, their M count, you know, they love to be like, we're just not gonna say the whole word, M count is exactly the same. And so they figure that stuff out, like they get these answers, and it's like, okay, this is pretty interesting. And then that is when Torben was like, you know what, I want to jack off on a different planet. And he was like, I gotta go, we gotta get the kids, this is our proof, we need proof that this planet is a virgins, those twins are the proof. And he takes off, and then that's when everything goes wrong. 100% everything goes wrong. So then we have Soul going after them, and Dara's like, hey, we'll get on the ship, you chase them down. They get there, and it's like, all right, you gotta calm down, we're gonna go get the girls, don't let them control your mind. Then it's like, all right, the Jedi are here, they're kind of effing with us. Then we get both sides of the story. We have like a bit of a repeat of the stuff with Anasea and Osha, and then we actually do get like this small segment with May and the Dathomirian mom. I can't remember her name, but the Dathomirian mom. And I gotta say, this is once again, much like with the bricks, which we're about to get to, another thing where I was like, the whole time I'm like, I really hope she was mind controlled. That was my thing. I said it a bunch of times, like, I hope she's mind controlled, because that'll make more sense if the mom took that extreme step to just be like, just kill your sister off and just kill her. But I will say that they kind of, once again, it was another one of those things where they added like just a little bit of extra stuff, and it was like, okay, so she did snap. She flat out snapped in that moment and had an idiotic decision, which even when that happened, I was like, man, I hope that's not it. I hope she didn't just have a snapping moment, even though we've seen it happen before. I go right to Revenge of the Sith. Anakin straight up choked the mother of his child. The whole movie was like, I'm trying to save her. And it was like, why'd you bring Obi-Wan? And he choked her. That's what he did. I'm just saying that's what happened. As much as we can hate a kid going crazy, we saw it happen in a dude who grew up effed up. So we saw it just in the younger version with May. And so in this episode, we see her do it. And then it's like, oh, she effed up. Like as soon as she did it, she was like, oh, I don't want to do this. And then she was trying to like stop the flames, just even on the book before she even like set the whole fire. She was like, oh, I messed up. And she was trying to fan the flames, which is, kind of the opposite of what you want to do. Drops the book, the flames start. She kind of does one stomp and was like, I guess I failed. Like, that's really what she did. She did like one stomp and it was like, oh, I guess she's burning. But, she called for her mom and everything. And I was like, okay, once again, small extra little bit. And I can appreciate it because when it was like, oh yeah, be mad and like, you want to stop them from taking your sister, then stop her from leaving. And it was like, okay. But as soon as she did the insane thing of saying, I'm just gonna kill you, she caught it. At the very least, she caught it. It was too late, but she did catch it and was like, ooh, a little much. Shouldn't set my sister on fire. So I can appreciate that. I can definitely say, at least she caught it. After she had like that quick snap, she caught it and they put it in there like, hey, see, she went crazy for a second, but she tried to catch it. And then the wires caught fire. And I guess the wires are like just full of gasoline because it went through the whole effing place. That still doesn't make any sense to me how the entire place blew up from that. Because I'm like, okay, the Jedi still had to have done something, right? Because the whole place blew up. But no, it was just from that fire. It was, they showed like it was the wires that caught fire and everything. So it's like, all right, I'll give you the wires, but still, the wires and the wire fire went through the entire building. That's still too crazy. That still makes no sense. So unfortunately, that answer just does not work. It does not work for me because I'm like, I'm sorry, but the whole building blew up. I cannot. Very unfortunate. But that was the thing where I was just like, oh, they tried. They tried to give us an answer. It's like, I see the wires caught fire. That's what you were missing. Well, okay. I mean, I know it can happen, but the whole place? It is what it is. It's canon now. So that's what happened. Also, I put it in here. They climbed the mountain again. Still crazy. They climbed it a second time. Just buck wild. So tried to stop the fire. Didn't really work. Soul killed the mom. Like I said, she went full crazy ghost mode. I don't know what the plan was there. Because then, like I said, right after that, it was like, hey, I was gonna let Osha go. Like, they showed the little part of her conversation where she talks with the other witches and they're like, hey, you can't just let her go. She's our future. And it's like, hey, today I'm choosing mom. And she was gonna let her daughter leave. She was gonna let the girls, be split up. And once again, I just can't, like the bricks. Like, it's like, hey, you showed the wires, but it's the whole building. I still can't get behind that. She was gonna let her daughter go. And then she was like, you know what? I got the perfect idea. Demon ghost mode. I don't know what to say to that. She brought it on herself. There's literally nothing to say. It's like, that just doesn't make sense. What were you thinking? You had your chance. You knew what you were gonna do. You were the one that was saying, hey, everybody hold up. And you decided, demon mode, that'll do the trick. I don't know. I'm still curious what she was gonna do. Like, I'm dead serious. I honestly want to know what she would have done. Like, was her plan? Because they kind of show it with her wife, the other mom, whatever, however you want to describe it. She disappeared too, and I assume it was, kind of like, if you played the Star Wars Jedi games, Mirren does that all the time. She like teleports and like goes away. So I guess that's what they were gonna do, and the way they were doing it was Mother Anasea was like teleporting away, and she was able to use her magic to basically grab May at the same time, and that's what she was doing. But this is once again going through that element of everyone being at like a heightened state of just like tension. Soul, through the whole episode, like, we got to get the girls out of here. We got to keep them safe. Like, these people are trying to sacrifice them, this and that. And once again, visually speaking, full demon mode. He had to put one in her, which killed her. Surprise, surprise. Maybe it's because the lightsabers are so big. That's why it actually got her this time. But does that, and then doesn't want to fight the other mom. Which once again, when they do the hand-to-hand stuff, when he's just dodging, like it's not even that action packed or anything in any regard. He's just dodging, but for some reason that's like for some of my favorite action in the whole thing. It's just like all he's doing is just calmly dodging everything, and I'm just like, why do I like this more than most of the other action in the whole show? I don't know why, but it's like all he has to do is just dodge and look calm while he's doing it, and it's like I like that a lot. So that was cool. The fire blows up the whole place. Then we do have a great lightsaber fight, I will say that. It was interesting. We got to see the Wookiee with the lightsaber come in, and he's just swinging and everybody's getting effed up. He grabs Torben, and we find out that's why he has the scars, because a Wookiee effing clawed his face and just mushed him on the wall. And it was like, all right, yeah, I can see that. He blocks the lightsaber, and then Soul has to come in, and he's just like, please, dude, stop. So he throws the kid on the ground, and then he just picks him up and just chucks him. And I gotta be honest, him just throwing them, once again, not even lightsaber stuff. Favorite part of the fight was him just being like, all right, let me just mush your face on the wall. Let me just throw this kid down. I'm gonna just pick you up and just launch you across the whole field. Loved all of that. I like the cool move where Soul, like he flips in the air, turns off his lightsaber, and then hits Kanaka in the head. So I was like, all right, that's cool. And then gets the lightsaber down. They have their fight. It was a nice fight. So then also, and I wrote this down, I forgot about this. When he first shows up, I swear to God, Soul was about to say shit, because he goes like, and he stopped. And I was like, was he about to say shit? I'm pretty sure he was. Like, I think that was the joke there, that he was about to say shit, and then it's Star Wars, so they won't have him say it. I was like, that's crazy. So then we have all the witches that died in the big pile. It was because they were controlling Kalnaka, and then when Indara helps him free himself, it kills all the witches off because they had to use a lot of power to control him, I guess. And I put, they passed out in the room from losing control, comma, still weird. Answer number 3 that I just cannot accept, because that makes no sense to me. Like, they all just died because they lost control of him. That seems odd. I know Mother Anasea is the strongest. I know she was talking to like one kid, but this was like 15 women combined, the power of many, and they all died. Just like that. Still weird. So it is what it is. And then we have the greatest moment, as far as I'm concerned, as far as answers, because we had this scene where, once again, it was perspective in episode 3. And then this episode, we get the actual perspective. Soul comes in, the girls are split from the bridge. He tried to save them both, because and I saw that in a lot of reviews. People were like, why couldn't he use the Force to try to save her? That was a part of perspective. He tried to save them both, and then it was like, well, dang, one of you wanted to go, one of you didn't want to go. And then he kind of just moved this hand over here and was like, she gone. So it was kind of crazy, but it was a tough decision, but he had to make it. And I was like, all right, I like that. It was interesting to see. That was probably, like I said, as far as perspective is concerned, that was my favorite answer out of all of it, because the way they showed it, to me, it kind of made sense. It seemed like he kind of came in at the last minute where he was like right behind her. And even when they showed it, and this is something that this is, I think, the thing that they changed the most from perspective. And that was why it really caught me off guard. Because unless I'm mistaken, in episode 3, he was on the bridge when they actually showed it, where it's like he came up behind her. And that was why a lot of people were like, well, why couldn't he save May using the Force? And during episode 3, I think they did it where it was like he was like right behind Osha, and then May was just on the other side. So it was like, well, he could grab her with one hand and just be like, boom, there you go. And I think that was how they did it in episode 3. And then in this one, it was like, oh, he wasn't on the bridge with her. He was like away from both of them. And that was how they did. And I was like, oh, that's a huge perspective shift from what we saw. Once again, I could be remembering it wrong, which is kind of how perspective works. But I think that's how they did it in episode 3. Probably wrong about that, but either way, I know they definitely didn't show him, standing on, on the side of the bridge using the Force to try to save both the girls. So that was probably my favorite thing as far as like a new perspective, because we actually saw he was trying to save them both. He was there, and he could have, well, he couldn't, but he did use the Force to attempt to save them both. And then he basically just had to give it up because he was trying to hold up the entire bridge. And that's why he had to basically just jump and catch her. So it's like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then we have our last little bit. And we find out why they went with the lie that they did. Soul was going to turn himself in. And Dara was like, well, we've gone through all of this. It was like, basically, she was just pissed. It was like, dude, the kid didn't want to jerk off on the planet anymore. You trying to be a dad all of a sudden. It's like, both of y'all just effing up and emotional and all this dumb crap. And now you want to turn yourself in. Too late. Too late. Her whole family's dead. Whole family's wiped out. Everybody's gone. You have to be her dad now. That's what you wanted. That's what you got to do. So now we're going to lie. You don't get to talk to the council. This is what happened. Her sister started a fire. Everybody died. That's it. That's the story. And then when Osha wakes up, it's like, yeah, May started a fire. And then they cut the episode. And I actually didn't hate the ending that they cut it right there. It was just like they cut it at the emotional beat where it was like, May started a fire and everybody died. And then it's like, boom, and they cut it. And I was like, I actually like that. I actually thought that was a good cut for that episode. And that's it. And then they also have a song at the end that plays, it's the power of two and everything. I put in quotations, people will be mad. People are going to definitely make fun of that song. I actually thought it was catchy. I didn't hate it, but it always feels weird to hear anything with lyrics in Star Wars. That's just how I feel about literally everything, unless it's, the Return of the Jedi thing. Oh, dang. I love that. I can't get over that. But that's episode 6, episode 7. We got one left. This was a long one. I knew it was going to be, especially for, getting the actual answers in episode 7. I cannot wait to see how people feel about this episode. But for me, like I said, they answered, honestly, I can't say they really did a ton, because a lot of the stuff I was just kind of like, okay, I'm sure it helped some people, where it was like the people that were like already super duper mad, where it was like, this is the dumbest thing ever. I think a lot of people got a lot of perspective where it was like, oh, maybe I was just like super duper mad and didn't realize that there were a lot of things that obviously just weren't answered. But even some of the answers we got, like I said, they just don't work. The fire still doesn't work. It still doesn't make any sense. It's not bricks anymore. It's the wires. But still, like I said, unless those wires were full of gasoline, I still don't comprehend how they traveled through the entire place and just blew the whole thing up. It still seems a bit far-fetched. I know fires go crazy, but most of the place was brick, so it still was through the wires, which is still a little wild. And then all the witches dying in a pile, still weird. Like they lost control and that killed them all. Like I know Indara helped him like break free of that, but it's like it still doesn't make sense to me. It still doesn't make sense why they would all die. Like it just doesn't make sense. That's all I can say, is like that just makes no sense to me. They all died. That's weird. So episode 7, the penultimate episode of the season, we'll say. We'll just go with season, because I just don't know what could possibly happen in one episode. Even if they made this junk 43 minutes like this episode, I don't know what they could possibly do that could be even close to a satisfying conclusion. I think there's going to be another huge twist, because I think they are going to do, there's talk that, there's going to be another thing from Legends canon that gets referenced at, within the finale. So something is going to happen. Something big for sure is going to go down in the last episode. I just don't see how it's going to be a wrapped up story, unless it's everyone's dead, because that's a wrap up for sure. So we'll see what happens next week. But that's where we are right now. I would love to know your thoughts on both episode 6 as well as episode 7. Episode 6, fascinating time. And then we still have to wait yet another week to see what happens inside of that helmet. So we'll see what goes on there. I really hope they don't do the stupid twist where it's like they do the good twin goes bad, the bad twin goes good. But I'm curious now. Osha officially is, I guess, kind of fallen for the evil guy. May officially has the answers from the other side, the perspective she did not have. Well, technically, it's not even the perspective she didn't have. It's the perspective we didn't have, because in all honesty, them telling the story, I mean, I guess there's still like quite a few things that she wouldn't know, especially from being a kid. She wouldn't know, like, hey, we were telling the truth. We really didn't know you guys were here, or any of this extra stuff. We thought, I thought you guys were in danger. I tried to save you. And so, so she'll have that perspective where it was like, he did try to save us both, but he had to make a tough choice. She might still be mad about that. Who knows? It's the finale. But man, oh man, I just don't see how even 43 minutes is enough time. I could be wrong. It doesn't mean it'll be good, let's be honest, but it might wrap up well enough. I think that's all we got. That's all we can hope for. Well enough. But that's the Acolyte. Episode 6 and 7. Would love to know your thoughts on both episodes. Sexy Sith episode, Answers episode, the fire. I can't wait to hear people talk about the fire, because that was the biggest joke. and even the actual answer still doesn't work. And it's like, dang, they had a chance and they still failed with it. Because even I can't be like the wires, the whole bit, like the whole building wires. But I don't know. If it was like if it was a normal building, I could almost give it to you. But it was a big complex built in a mountain that's a circle. It's not like it's just a building and the fire just went right up through the wires and burnt everything. It was a big effing building with tunnels and like just a whole, there's so many different facets of that structure. It was like, yep, that fire in the corner, whole place is gone. This has been a heck of a show to watch. It's been fun. It's been fun to talk about more than watch, more than anything else. This has got to be the most fun thing I've ever talked about for Star Wars. Like all the other shows, it's like I like them, I could talk about my theories and this and that, and this has been the most fun to just talk about in general, because I'm just like, wow, there are things that are just bad, and that's fun to talk about. It's just interesting to talk about. There's the element of the stuff I don't like from a writing perspective, the chaos of it all, and just me enjoying the chaos of like people that are just hating on it. They're the people that actually just hate on it just because they're just crappy people. They're the people that hate on it that unfortunately get wrapped into the element of being called racist or homophobic, all the other stuff. So it's like you have the actual pieces, then you have the people who unfortunately get wrapped up in that stuff, then you have the people that just don't like the show because the writing's bad, then you have the people that are really enjoying the show, which blows my mind. I mean, more power to you, for real. But it's fun. It's been fun to talk about, for sure. Fascinating. This really makes me think. Is every once in a while, I watch TV and I'll just be like, I could write. You watch a show, you say a couple lines, you're like, oh, that's what I would say. And then the character says it, you're like, oh, I could write. And then this whole show comes out. And I'm like, anyone can write. We can all write something. You can do it. It's on Disney Plus. You can write it. You don't have to be on Tubi. This is on Disney Plus. That's The Acolyte. I think I've said enough. I would love to know your thoughts on all things The Acolyte. Going into the finale, what theories do you guys have? Thoughts, theories, hopes, dreams? Will we get another cameo? Is it going to be a Legends cameo? Everything you guys are thinking going into this final episode, at least for this season. Might not be a series finale, but who knows? We'd love to know your thoughts, so please put them down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.